Good luck, mister.
Thanks, dude.
Oops.
Alright. 3, 2, 1, go.
So, Jorf, do you have any initial thoughts on this video game, Kid Icarus, before I just start hollering all kinds of facts?
Well, first of all, I haven't got a lot of practice in, and it's a pretty hard game, so we'll see where that takes us.
I'm not sure I ever knew the answer to this. Did you play it much as a kid, or did you mostly pick it up just as a speed run in the past year?
I did play it as a kid. I was one of those kids that played it, and I like drew out the maps and stuff, and yeah.
See, I played it as a kid, but I didn't make it far enough to where you actually needed a map. I'm pretty sure I never beat 1-2, which is probably pretty much the norm. Because this is a really hard game. Like, really, even as soon as the first and second stages, if you fall down this pit, it doesn't scroll back down. No, sir. You're just dead. You start that stage over.
Yeah, that's it.
There's really, I honestly love this game, because there is so much to know about it. For one thing, the thing that a lot of people don't know when they play it casually is it's kind of got a level up aspect to it in two different ways. For one thing, you can see just as he beats this level here, he accumulated score based on the enemies he killed. And if you look in the upper left of the screen, he's got a tiny little sliver of health, basically. You start with 7 hit points. And increasing your score to certain intervals makes that health increase by 8 more points every time, and you can increase it up to 4 times for like five kind of bar lengths total. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, as you go through these levels, in some of the levels there are what are called, I guess we'll call them zoo stores, and similarly, basically you need to rack up a certain skill, it's called, where if you get enough skill points within a certain level, and then you enter a zoo store, he'll be able to increase your damage, your strength it's called, and you do more damage that way. You start with 1 strength, and then every upgrade Zeus gives you increases your strength by 1. So 1-2 has basically the first zoo store. So the reason you're seeing Jorf killing all these enemies and collecting their hearts and stuff, instead of just blazing through the level like he did for 1-1, is he wants to get his skill level up to 10,000. And so long as he gets that skill level to 10,000 before he gets to the zoo store at the end of the stage, then he will be able to pick up that arrow upgrade and increase his damage, which is very, very important for the bosses later on in the game.
Yeah, I hope I'm good here. Hope he's glad. Oh no!
No, he's not glad? Uh-oh.
It's not glad.
What are you gonna do? Okay.
I got it.
Yeah.
That's a double damage increase.
Yeah. It's true. So he must have been like in the high 9,000s probably. And so he's got to do this level over again, starting from skill 0. So you'll see him do this level again, and then we'll just have to try again for that strength upgrade. Because the reason it's so important is, once you get to the first boss is in 1-4. His name is Twin Bellows, and he's this ridiculous Hydra boss. I think he's got 200 health like any of the other bosses, but he's very tricky because you need to pin him a certain way. You'll see when he gets there, but you need to basically pin him a certain way, and so that you can just keep damaging him. And without that 2 strength, he's still gonna kind of try and get loose of your stun lock in a way. And if he does, it's really hard to finish him off. So if you go from 1 strength to 2 strength, then that means you only need to fire 100 shots at him instead of 200, which cuts the time down a lot and basically just makes it a lot less risky. And of course, you'll have that strength upgrade for the rest of the game too. So yeah, redoing this level is basically a necessity. Ice in this game is very crazy. I was going to say very cool, but I didn't want to try for the pun. It's very crazy in that not only there's a bit of a skid when you kind of run and then turn around, like there would be in any in ice physics of any game, but it also very heavily affects your jump. So if you jump off of ice, and then try turning around in the air, it's really, really kind of rigid, and you're going to turn around a lot slower. And I remember the first time I played this game more recently, the ice physics really caught me by surprise, and I died in a really stupid way because of that. So
yeah, I think that happens to everyone in their first playthrough.
It's great. So he did successfully get that 2 strength upgrade and changed colors accordingly.
Rocking the green now.
Yep. There's all kinds of things which affect that skill. So he's not going to care about accumulating skill within one level again until 2-1, which is a few levels from now.
We're gonna lane this out.
Yeah. So the sequence of levels between 1-2 and 2-1 is very difficult in a speedrun, because basically you really only get 1 health upgrade. So for the sake of the marathon, Jorf went ahead and used Death Abuse to refill his health, rather than risk a death. So it's like, you know, a matter of 7 seconds or like 10 seconds of restart versus dying later on in this level and risking having to do the whole damn thing over again.
Yeah, when you die, you just start the level as you started it, but you get up to 2 health.
Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of things that do affect your skill and help you get to that 1,000 skill that is needed in some levels. There's killing enemies, which gives you a certain amount of skill based on kind of their size in a way, the size of the hearts that they drop. There's also picking up those hearts that they drop. There's also, those are the 2 main things. There's also small things like entering a door gives you 300 skill, but it's mostly accumulated by killing enemies and chowing down their delicious hearts. The actual kind of function of hearts in this game is supposed to be currency. You see in the upper left there that he's got 99 hearts right now, and really it's just, that's kind of another way to help you out when you're playing the game slowly, is while you're accumulating those skill points, you're also going to be picking up all these hearts. So you can buy all kinds of things with those hearts, from health upgrades to kind of a second life, as it were, in that once your health goes down to 0, it refills up to 2 bars. You can buy feathers so that if you fall off the screen, you rather than die as you would normally, you just kind of get a short time of flight, and you can save yourself that way. But those things are all very, very expensive. So instead, Jorf really only has enough hearts to be able to pick up 1 small health upgrade in one of the very last levels of the game. So he's not going to be able to have any of those crutches for the most part until later on. So we have here the first fortress level in 1-4. Every 4th level of the game, the general layout of the level changes. So it's not just scrolling up to down to up or left to right. You've got this very complex maze, and that's basically what Jorf was referring to earlier when he said as a kid he made a map up the game. Here, you've got, what you're supposed to do in this level is you're supposed to go all the way around this complex set of doors, just like you would in any maze. But what Jorf is going to do instead is he's going to clip into this wall here, and then do
There we go.
A duck and crouch off of it. And he just got it, so nice. That's pretty hard to do, and it's kind of, in the very first speedruns of this game, we're talking like 7 years ago, my understanding was basically, at the time, it was basically thought to be impossible in real-time setting and only doable in a task setting. And so, but more recently, standards of speedruns change, so you gotta do it every run now, and if you take too long, that's a reset. So this is that Twin Bellows boss here. You can see Jorf's got him in a stun lock. Every hit is doing 2 damage. Maybe he only had 100 health, not 200. But yeah, so he cruised right through that boss and demolished him. Sometimes he will try and escape your stun lock, in which case it's a bit of a pain to get him back into it. So now we're into World 2. Like I said, 2-1 here is the first time that he needs, or the second time rather, that he needs to accumulate skill. So that's why he's stopping occasionally and killing those rock dudes.
Let's make it interesting.
He's got 1 health left, so any hit at all from anything will kill him. So he's got to make it all the way to the end of this level, slowly accumulating that 10,000. Sorry if I said 1,000 skill before. It is 10,000 skill, so that he can, get the Zeus door at the end. Every rock that he kills drops. It rewards him 500 skill points, and every heart he picks up from those rocks. Oh man, these are some ridiculously close calls. And every heart he
all over again.
No!
Oh. Dang. All right.
Oh, snake. And there was the challenge.
The health was right there, yeah.
Free health upgrade from dying instead. That works too.
Yeah.
So yeah, accumulating skill isn't too bad in this one. I think it's harder in 1-2, just because in 2-1 you've got these rocks that if you both kill them and collect the heart that they drop, that they give you 1,000. So you only need to do that, you only need to do that 7 or 8 times if you combine everything else that you do in this stage. You may be wondering, sometimes he collects those, he picks up a harp, which turns everything into hammers. You may be wondering what those do. In the speedrun, the short answer is nothing, because what they're supposed to do is, in those fortress levels, you use a hammer on those tiny little statues, and they give you what's called, I think it's called like a sentinel or guardian or something, that supposedly helps out on the boss of that stage, but in reality, they're completely worthless. For a lot of the bosses, they literally don't do anything. Like in the World 2 boss, if you hit him with an arrow, I think it just goes right through him and doesn't do anything. They're supposed to do 5 damage, but instead, they're really just worthless, so hammers are pretty useless in this game. World 2's got some really hard levels. You saw 2-1 can really surprise you with those rocks that fall out of the sky, and you're basically assuming that you're going to take a crap ton of damage from just walking through those frogs, for example. And sometimes these dudes from the bottom of the screen can also surprise you. So you're really pretty low on health. 2-1 is pretty hard in that regard. 2-2 isn't that bad, but there's a very interesting thing about it that you'll see very shortly. And then 2-3 is ridiculously difficult as well. So Jorf finds himself with 1 health here, so he's giving us some more close calls. So there's the other Zeus room that is used in the run, which takes you to 3 strength. And he's going to stay at 3 strength for the rest of the run. I think the jury is still out on whether or not it would be technically faster to go up to 4 strength in 3-1, but it's ridiculously close.
I think it really depends on your luck at the final boss fight.
I agree.
For Pandora, I guess.
Yeah, if you get good luck on Pandora, then 3 strength is faster. So technically, it's probably just better to stay with 3 strength if you are aiming for the Wonder Run. So 2-2 is really awesome, because it is one of very few games where you'll perform that wall wrap, and you are way, 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 way so far to the right of the screen that basically you can't see anything. So Jorf has to memorize this entire level, and basically just kind of time it based on... He has very little room for seeing what's ahead of him, so he just has to memorize the level and jump based on his knowledge of the level. Fortunately, for a long time, enemies are basically a non-issue, just because they usually spawn so close to the center of the screen. So for the most part, enemies in this stage are not too bad, and it's more just kind of making sure you get all those jumps accurately. The reason you want to go this far isn't just for fun or being impressive.
Although it is hilarious.
Yes, it is. It's also, to stay in front of these enemies, as we discussed, but more importantly, it's to make sure that for these elevators that are coming up, you can make the jump to them. Because if you were closer to the center of the screen and you tried jumping onto these elevators, it's very risky and also tight, and in some cases impossible to be able to make it before they go too high. So in some cases you would need to actually wait for the elevators, which would slow you down, of course. one thing that's pretty cool about this game, I guess I can talk about it now. You won't really see them, but I didn't talk about this in my HDQ commentary, but I regret that because it's really cool. Those snake urns that you don't see right now, you'll see them in 2.3 and you saw them in 2.1. They're just these snake urns on the screen that that seemingly randomly spawn snakes that pop out at you. But the way that those work is very interesting. It's not random, and unlike in some levels, it's not even based on your position or anything. The way it works is there are these 4 invisible kind of, let's call them like laser bars, that are constantly scrolling across the screen really quickly, going down, down, down. You can't see them, but they're there. And every time one of those invisible bars hits a snake urn, it'll spawn a snake. So, you know, 4 just came out. And so, once that last snake is off the screen, the 4 invisible laser bars come back and start scrolling across the screen again, just constantly, and trying to run into a snake urn so that they can spawn more snakes. And so I always thought that's pretty cool that there are these kind of constant checks going on. And the way that I know this is Randall, who passed this game, provided the Lua script for being able to see them. So if you run this game with that script running, you can see these laser thingies constantly running across the screen. So again, there are like 4 laser things scrolling right there. And as soon as the fourth snake spawns off screen, they start it again, and then that previous urn, only 2 more snakes spawned because only 2 lasers could hit at a time, and then so 2 more snakes spawned at the next turn. So I hope that's like clear at all, but but it's really cool to me. Yeah. So Jorf again needs to be running through this entire stage at the far right of the screen, because if he wants to meet these elevator cycles, that's just what he has to do.
Yeah, I could have made those jumps, but they're pretty ballsy.
Yeah, they're really tough, and that's a very frequent resets part of the of the run. Because you really like Jorf's run of this is really solid, and you basically need to take every kind of risk necessary. The only the main improvements to the run is basically improving, I think, the World 2 boss, and maybe getting slightly better luck at the World 3 boss, but I think that's about it. Because it is a really, really good run that, with great execution and great luck. So yeah, it looks like, let's try and jinx him. I mean, he's at the end. It looks like he's gonna get through 2-3 just fine, which is cool, because it's a really, really difficult stage.
Yeah, it's probably one of the hardest.
For sure. 2-4 is another very heavy reset point, and without even seeing it, I know that Jorf is gonna do a death abuse here, because what you have to do basically is you have to do 2 subsequent 2-frame jumps in a row while standing in lava and jumping out of lava. So you need to basically, unless you do it first try or like within a few tries, you need to have a lot more health than you would normally. I think in your run, you didn't do a death abuse, right?
No.
Okay, yeah, so in Jorf's run, he didn't have to do that, which is just one more way of saying that it's a really good run. Because in most cases, you need that health. So here we go. We got two frame windows in a row that he's trying for.
Easy.
Nice. And there it is, he got it. So it's a 2-frame window to jump out of the lava at the right time, and then another 2-frame window to release your jump in the air at the right time. And he just got it maybe like 4th, 5th try, which is really good.
Did you ever figure out the window for turning around?
Oh yeah, I think it was like 6 frames, something like that. It was less than I thought, but not totally ridiculous. I'm tempted to open my notes right now. So here we have Huge Raw, which is honestly one of my favorite bosses in a speedrun. There's no randomness to it, and basically one mechanic of this game we haven't gone over yet is that if you just stand and tap B, then Pit will fire arrows very slowly. But there's a neat thing about the game where if you jump after you, or if you duck after you shoot an arrow, then that like cooldown is reset. So you need to, in order to hit a boss as quickly as possible, you need to constantly be shooting and crouching between. to fire arrows as quickly as possible. And that's why you see Jorf kind of ducking between his shots here, is to get as many arrows in as possible. Like I said, there's no randomness to this boss at all, so it's all just about how quickly you can do that and how well you've been able to master that to shoot quickly as possible. Another thing Jorf's going to do here is...
Not even close.
Oh, okay. What he wanted to do is, basically, if you stand in that lava after you kill Hydra, which is the boss, and it let the lava take you down to 0 health, then while you're still kind of dying, while you're falling off the screen in a death animation, your health stays at 0, but you haven't like lost at the level yet. So until you fall off the screen entirely, as long as the level ends before you fall off the screen, then you beat it, and you stay at 0 health, and you enter 3-1 with technically 0 health. And what that allows you to do is if you take damage on kind of a periodic, not an enemy, but a periodic damage thing, like that kind of those red jelly type things you see right here, then that boosts you back from 0 health to full health, which is a wonderful time saver. Rather than you needing death abuse, you can just kind of continue without any time loss whatsoever, and refill your health that way, which is a huge deal because health management in this game is key and basically makes the run. If you can avoid using death abuse as much as possible, then that's, for the most part, going to decide the success of your run. 3-1 is honestly one of my favorite stages, and I don't necessarily know why that is. I just think it's a lot of fun. But that's that. That's 3-1
Yeah, I think
right
it's
there.
a lot of fun too. The whole music, the atmosphere, it's pretty good.
Yeah. 3-2 is really cool too. It's a lot more based on elevator cycles than 3-1 is. So you really just want to try and meet these elevator cycles as quickly as possible. For example, that one there, you need to make that 3-frame jump that Jorf tried for first try, or else you can't make the elevator cycle, and you need to wait a little bit, which of course wastes some time. So you can see here where it's very elevator cycle based. For the most part, besides that first jump, it's a little auto-scrollery as far as these elevators go. And then that's the summary of 3-2 basically, and then we've got more action and then more platformers. One important thing to know about this game is that if you go as quickly as possible, you'll often just be at the very top of the screen. And so it's some parts of the game, like right now, are a little auto-scrollery. Just as long as kind of the screen doesn't stop for a moment, you're going as quickly as you can, and you can't speed it up any more than that in some parts. For the most part, that's not the case, but in those like very vertical jumping sections, you can only speed up the game so much, and you'll see that again a bit in 3-3. So Jorf is coming to the end of 3-2. These platforms have always looked extremely delicious to me. I've kind of likened them to maybe like jelly-filled croissants, I think is what I see them as, and I just want to chow down on them. You can see, we were talking, these stores have all kinds of things, from shops, to the zoo stores we were talking about, to health doors, to kind of a roulette, I guess, type luck thing, where if you basically have to open up jars in a certain order, and if you do it wrong, then I guess you just get nothing instead of getting a sweet prize. There's also like prove yourself rooms where a bunch of suitcases or speck-nosed enemies come flying at you, and you need to kill them. I think it mostly sometimes it's only for the purpose of helping you accumulate your skill, and other times it's if you do it successfully and prove your worth or whatever they say, then you're rewarded with one of 3 rewards that you're choosing, which is either a fire shield that rotates around you, a double-length arrow, which just kind of fires across the screen, or a little rotating fire shield which goes around your projectile. But those don't really help with damage in a speedrun. In fact, the double-length arrow thing is can potentially be detrimental simply because you can only have 2 arrows on screen at a time, so if you miss, it's harder to kind of keep that rapid fire going. And so you won't see that in a speedrun. One thing that won't come into play anymore, but is another very interesting thing about this game, is that and certain enemies, these like hovering enemies, the non-repet hover enemies and elevators share the same RAM address. And so I guess I won't go into detail because it doesn't really apply anymore, but they have very interesting shared characteristics. And you wouldn't think that enemies and elevators would have those characteristics, but this game actually has uses the same engine as Metroid. And you heard them talking a bit earlier before about kind of when a Ripper goes off the screen, the next Ripper that spawns will share its kind of same path, and that kind of carries over here in that certain enemies and certain elevators will affect the behavior of one another as one scrolls off the screen and another comes onto the screen. 3-4 is really, we've talked about some hard levels, like 2-3 and 2-4 and 1-2, but I think 3-4 is honestly the most difficult part of the game, and which is nice, of course, because it's at the very end. And the reason for that is because you have so many of these rooms where they're just random little spinny wheels that do either 2 or 3, I think, damage, depending on the color of them. And that's a lot of damage. And it's very easy to get hit by them, just depending on luck. And there's not much you can do about it in most cases. You just have to hope. And normally, that wouldn't be too bad, except you've got this crazy-ass boss at the end called Pandora. And Pandora, there's a ton of luck involved in Pandora, because
I might die here.
In the upper right, oh no, in the upper right of the screen.
Holy Christ!
Oh wow!
This game is a lot of improv, just in places like that.
So you'll see when Jorf gets to Pandora, but if Pandora hovers too much at the upper right of the screen, you just can't do much. Whereas if he's in the kind of left side of the screen, the architecture of the screen really helps you just pump up the damage. Jorf he finally had the opportunity to use all those hearts he's been collecting to get a chalice for some health. Because this Pandora fight, I mean, not only can Pandora screw you over in terms of just not being damaged, but he and his 2 balls can surprise you by turning around at the last second and doing like 5 damage to you or something ridiculous. So,
oh no!
It's a really hard level.
There's an example of that ball.
Just like that. There's like if that ball kept on the same route or whatever that it was going, he would have been fine. But instead, right next to him, it turned around and hit him. That's good, because it offers us the opportunity to talk about Eggplant Wizards, which is another very memorable part of this game from everyone's childhood who's ever existed and played this game. Eggplant Wizards only exist in these fortress levels, and the fun thing about them is that those projectiles, those eggplant projectiles that they fire, turn you into an eggplant. And what that means is you can do everything normally except fire arrows, which, needless to say, is a pretty important part of this game. So what you need to do, if you are eggplanted, is you need to find one of any number of extremely inconveniently placed nurse rooms, and she'll turn you back into normal pit. But in 3-1, and for the most part any fortress level, but in 3-1 especially, they're all really out of the way. And if you get hit, then it's like 2 minutes at least to go to a nurse room and get back to where you were. So that really sucks. So you don't want to get eggplanted, and that's why kind of Eggplant Wizards are really so memorable from youth. And was iconic enough, and they were iconic enough to make an appearance in the late great Captain N TV series, which I know that everyone loves. So we've got another shot at Pandora here. It is a very hard boss, so you can just hope for the best. And again, how well you can, do your rapid fire stuff is a huge part of speeding the boss fight up as well. Because the sequence for optimal rapid firing is but like between frames is B down, B down, B down, the TAS is still able to go right up next to a boss and just do that B down, B down, B down, and still fire 30 shots per second. So when you're looking at a TAS of this, Randall's TAS, it just goes by so quickly because he's right up next to the boss, so your two arrow maximum is not an issue at all, and 30 hits per second is 90 damage per second. So the fight is over within a matter of seconds, basically. Whereas in a real-time run, you have to be safe, and you obviously cannot fire at 30 times a second. So it can kind of, yeah. So it can last quite a bit longer, and will last a bit longer every single time. I don't know if I haven't been keeping up with chat. Jorf,
oh my god! I'm throwing it away.
Oh no.
What is that you're saying?
What is your record of this game?
25, 23.
Okay. So yeah.
How are we doing on time now? Actually, this is gonna cost a lot.
Let's see. I'll load it up right now. We're at 30. So I mean, I don't know where the schedule is, but
this is why my estimate is 35.
Yeah, because 3-4 can be ridiculous, and so can some other stages as well. Let's see, what was I going to say? So yeah, Jorf's run is 25-23, which, as I mentioned, is a really, really solid run. He gets just about everything, and it's just a really solid run overall, so you should definitely check that out if you really want to see a solid run of this game. I wish there were more runners. It is a very challenging game to pick up for sure. As Jorf said, there's tons of improv needed in this run, which is really why I respect the run a lot. And like Legend of Zelda, for example, is another run where improv is just the game is all improv, which is just so impressive in a run to me. And Kid Icarus, I'd say a lot of that is true for Kid Icarus as well. Just because like enemies coming out of the side or boss patterns will never be the same every single time, for the most part. Outside of levels like 1-1 and 2-2. You're going to see different things every time, and it's all about how well you can adapt and react and you know, perform under fluctuating circumstances. But unfortunately, there are not that many runners of this game. Jorf has 25-23. My best is 27-01. Darkwing has, I believe, Darkwing Duck, who runs Zelda, has, I think, maybe a 28 something, but don't quote me on that. And I think those are the only three sub 30-minute times. The previous record that stood for I think like 7 years, we'll say, was T-Mont's 33-minute time. That was back in 2006, I think. And the reason that stood for so long is just because this game is very intimidating and it's really hard to pick up. And I think another reason that a lot of people haven't picked it up is that in the beginning of this level, 3-4, when you climb down the ladder, there are two eggplant wizards which shoot at you. And it was for a very long time thought to be complete luck if you, at the very last stage of the run, if you were going to get eggplanted or not. And it was thought to be a 50-50 chance. But at some point within the last year, we just found that if you just hold down as you're climbing down the ladder, your sprite doesn't change, but your hitbox does change as if you were ducking. So that's just enough to make it so that you never get hit by that eggplant, which helped out, I think, the speedrunning scene of this game a lot, as there's no longer this just total luck 50-50 shot on whether your run can be completed or not. Alright, fingers crossed. We're at 17 health, 14 health. I mean, 5 shots.
Alright.
Alright, Pandora's slain. Nice. Well done.
Apostrophe glad. There's 2 of us now, let's go.
So unlike the rest of this level, or what you've seen in this game so far, the last level here is a total auto-scroller. And the idea is that if you don't shoot any enemies at all, then the level will just loop over and over and over and over and over. But if you have to basically kill 50 enemies by the end of the loop. in order to approach the final boss, Medusa. So what Jorf is going to be doing is it's not too bad, but he's just going to be aiming to kill 50 enemies before that loop occurs. One thing you also have to keep in mind is it's not, in order to respawn enemies as quickly as possible, it's kind of completely up to you how quickly they spawn. It's not based on screen position. So what you need to do is you need to kill all 4 enemies and then collect all 4 of their hearts. If you kill 3 and collect 3 hearts, and then the last enemy or its last heart is still on the screen, then it's not going to respawn until it scrolls off screen. So you need to make sure that you collect hearts as quickly as possible, and then you should be set for the most part. Medusa is a pretty interesting final boss in that it seems if you don't know the trick, then it could screw you over pretty easily, because you're just kind of figuring there's lasers on the screen, there's this crazy snake on the screen, and you're trying to find this positioning. You're frantically panicking, trying to find this positioning of how do I shoot Medusa without being hit by anything. But there's a pretty flexible position you can just hover in and slowly shoot lasers at Medusa, arrows at Medusa, to just kill her quickly. And so that part becomes pretty trivial, either casually or in a speedrun once you know what to do. I remember when TMR played this game and for his NES Mania, he found some crazy positioning right next to Medusa, where he was just firing kind of point blank into her eyeball, and it's actually kind of precise positioning to do that, so it was pretty cool to see him. So Jorf, as you can tell from the screen, from the music change, Jorf was able to hit those 50 enemies in time, and now all he's got to do is finish off Medusa, and he has beaten Kid Icarus. So we'll just leave you in silence until that, and then Jorf will call time.
Alright, and time.
Nice.
Alright, could have gone better.
That's alright. Pandora, I mean, there's nothing you can really do about those Pandora deaths. They were like a foot from you when they turned around and killed you, so what can you do? A matter of pixels.
Thank you.
Looks like your final time was 36:56.
Alright.
That's what Pandora will do, I guess.
That's what happens. Wish I could have saved you guys some time, but... Alright, we got some awesome games coming up next. I know it.
I'm gonna go ahead and duck out, but good luck with the rest of the marathon. I'll be continuing to watch, and good run, Jorf. Well done.
Yeah. Thanks, Blecky.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you both, Blecky and Jorf, for playing
guys.
and the commentary.
Dexter,
Yep, see ya.
Dexter, could you just yell at bad breaks that I'm taking off? Oh, there he goes.
Oh yeah, there you heard him.
Bye-bye. It's cracking. Alright, see you guys.
See ya. Alright, we are gonna change the restreamer, so please don't go anywhere and get ready for Ninja Gaiden block and Mega Man block. And no. So, alright. So stay tuned until the next restreamer starts.